Hello and welcome back to Mindset Matters. My name is Victoria and I'm excited to chat with you today. This podcast is all about talking about life, looking at life through higher emotions such as resilience, presence, and gratitude. You guys know the drill. I am here to share my thoughts on why practicing these types of emotions are keys to success in all areas of our life. So, thank you for joining me. And let's jump into today. So, today we're going to talk about being influenced by others. Because in today's society, I feel like it is so easy to be influenced by other people in so many different areas of our life. And I think it can be just as challenging to kind of know who you are or have a sense of purpose and know really what you want out of your life and how to get there. And I think it can be increasingly challenging for people to answer these questions and kind of do things for themselves and do things that are really things that are driven by them, their own desires, their own wants, their own passions. So today we're going to break it down, and I want to share my own journey on how I've been able to kind of learn to recognize when I'm being influenced by other people, how those people are influencing me, and how I've learned to almost separate myself from different situations so that I can see it and that I can thoughtfully respond to it and essentially decide what I want to be doing or make decisions that are true for me, not for people around me or the influences in my life. So I think this topic's super interesting because when I was thinking about it last night, I realized that there's just so many layers to it. There's so many different angles to look at being influenced. So we're going to kind of break down each, category, if you will. And then I want to share at the end some tips and tricks and things that I've learned, again, to kind of separate myself and make sure that I'm making decisions for me and not for other people. So layer number one, we'll call them layers, I guess. Today we're getting into the onion. So layer number one is how the people around us influence us. So this is like in-person connections or our friends, coworkers, there's people who we surround ourselves with. Now, we always hear surround yourself with the right people. But what does that even mean? And why is it important? I think it's important to know who you are and, what you want to be and kind of strive to find people with a similar vibe or similar values. It's not to say you should only hang out with one type of person or only hang out with people who like the exact same things as you, but I think when we think about our core values, think about the things that are really, really important to you. Maybe how you show up in the world, the energy you bring, your core values of how you should treat other people. I think all in all, you should surround yourself with people who share similar values because that's not going to cause friction over time. And by hanging out with people who share similar values, again, I think they kind of will understand why you're making certain decisions rather than feel like they're trying to push you to make other decisions, if that makes sense. So for me, something I really look for these days is like energy and just positivity in general. This is super important to me, and I've talked about this countless times, but you guys know that it's so easy to complain, or it's so easy when we're in a negative space to connect with people based on common complaints. And this is something I see so much. It's almost like this default into conversation. If you don't know what to talk about, people just start like kind of complaining about something, whether it's complaining about the weather or something at work or things in general, the government. I don't know. I feel like it's so easy for people to kind of make conversation in that way. And that's just something I don't like being around because it's so easy to engage in those types of conversations and then you just kind of leave feeling negative. So for me, I really look for energy and I really try to surround myself and hang around people who have a similar outlook on life and who try to bring their best self in kind of casual settings, I suppose. So something I do with this is I always ask myself after I hang out with someone, like, how do I feel? How do I feel after that encounter, that engagement? Do I feel good? Do I feel negative? Do I feel like it was a waste of time in some ways? And that gives me a really good perspective on whether or not this is someone I want to kind of keep hanging out with, you know? So let's dive into our close friends, because I feel like close friends might be the most influential people in our life, the people that influence us the most. And I think this can be good and bad. And I've definitely experienced both. So this is like going beyond those kind of casual relationships. Like once we're invested in a friendship, we want to keep it, right? You want to almost conform to certain aspects of their life and their ideas and their actions because they're your friend, they're your good friend, and you want them in your life. So, what I think can happen is there's this desire to kind of want to fit in, there's a desire to want to impress our friends, there's a desire to want to maintain the friendship. And I think it's kind of easy to fall into a pattern in our close friendships where we're just kind of following the general consensus, or if you have a close like group of friends and there's a couple people who tend to kind of make suggestions on what to do, you kind of just start to follow what they want to do all the time. And you might think, yeah, like that's what we always do, or that's what I want to do too. And you don't always think about it, right? And I think it can be easy to kind of, again, want to conform or want to fit in with our friends or not want to lose close friends. So we kind of go through these periods of, even if you're changing and growing, you might want to kind of hold on really tightly, again, to these types of friendships. I think feelings of like jealousy and insecurity can show up in friendships, which are really like ego-based drives, again, that drive us to conform and to say, well, my friend is doing this, so I should be doing that too. Or the feeling of insecurity of like, well, if I don't do this thing with my friends, then we're not going to hang out anymore, or they're not going to think I'm cool anymore, or that I don't want to do certain things. And I think this really kind of came up for me when I was more entering my mid-20s. So after university, once I started working, and I don't know, I think I hit a point where I kind of had a change in priorities. And I felt like this change in priorities came before some of my friends. And it's not to say that it's anyone's fault, but I think I started to feel people were doing things that I didn't really want to do anymore. And I really had this all or nothing mindset that I felt like I needed to do those things in order to still keep my friendships, which looking back is probably not true. And I think that kind of stemmed from some own insecurities that I had. But again, that's kind of how I dealt with it, was this kind of feeling of, okay, I need to conform, or I need to just do what everyone's doing. And that's it. And that led me to really feel like I had friends, but I was alone. Or I needed to keep up with certain things, or I was making decisions that I wasn't happy with at the expense of, well, I want to keep these friendships. Now, layer number 3 probably won't come as a surprise, but layer number 3 is social media and the internet. Is it a Mindset Matters episode if I don't talk about the internet? So I want to start this kind of layer by asking you a couple questions, and I want you to answer me. I'm listening. So first of all, who is your favorite influencer? Why do you like them? What about them like attracts you to being influenced by this person? I'm going to answer this question. My favorite influencer or like internet personality is Emma Chamberlain. And this is because she has always shown up very relatably. Is that a word? She's super real on the internet. She doesn't always look amazing. She shows up anyways. She's always been really honest about mental health and having mental breakdowns and just sharing her own personal journey, struggling with different things. And I also think she's badass and funny and cool. So if Emma does it, I'm likely to think that it's cool. And then therefore I'm influenced. So I kind of want to talk about like the start of influencer culture, because to me, the first types of influencers that I used to see were like these travel vloggers. So people were getting paid to kind of travel all over. Their Instagram feed just looked so aesthetic. Like they're getting paid to go on these amazing trips and showcase different swimwear brands. And, I think of, what was her name? Helen Owen. What's she up to these days? Like 2013. I'm thinking like this is 10 years ago. I'm like seeing the first types of influencers and I'm like, wow, like their life just looks so perfect. And the other thing on YouTube was like makeup gurus, beauty gurus sharing, makeup tips and tricks and all of that. I think that was kind of my first experience with like influencer culture. And some of it started out very innocently, and it started out as like they're just sharing their own stuff. And then it kind of gets into, well, they're making money from showcasing certain brands and making deals. And there was kind of like this gray area kind of came up of what was like ethical to do. I think something that's super interesting is that we, as the consumer of content, we feel like we know the influencer, right? We build rapport and we kind of trust them. And I think this is what leads us ultimately to being influenced. Because there's this idea that like we want to support these influencers because we like them. And it's interesting. I've had people say that to me before of just, hey, Vic, like I really, when I talked to you for the first time, I felt like I already knew you, even though like we just met. And that was interesting to me to hear because it's true. Like I share a lot of my thoughts on the internet. So anyone who listens to a lot of my episodes, might definitely feel like they know me in some way when we've actually never met. And I just think that part of influencer culture is so interesting because I've definitely experienced it, right? Like Emma Chamberlain, I feel like I know her. Other people, I feel like I know them in some level because of what they share and how honest they are with their audience. And again, there's this level of, well, I want to support the people that I care about because there is this kind of level of trust of like, wow, I do really like and trust this influencer, even though I don't actually know them. And I feel like this is when we kind of get influenced to, well, we want to buy the things that they're using. We want to have their products if they launch their own lines. We, see someone with great skin. We want to also have their skincare routine, so we'll buy those products. So I think in our culture today, it's so easy to be influenced, and especially by people we connect with on a deeper level than just an aesthetic Instagram feed, right? It's definitely shifted from, wow, you look perfect, I also want to be perfect and look like you and be like you, to connecting with people on a bit of a deeper level when we actually really relate to them or feel like we can relate to them or feel like, again, we know them. So when is this kind of negative? Because influencer culture, it's interesting, right? And people make a living, can make a full living, live very lavish lives from being influencers. So I guess what's kind of a negative side of influencer culture, when it can turn negative, is when people start promoting things just for the money. They get a really big check and they're like, yep, you could pay me to talk about anything. You could pay me to promote anything. And there's definitely people who we've seen as like sellouts, right? Or people who start promoting things and it's obvious they don't really know the product, or it's obvious that they've never really tried it or care about it, but we know they're getting paid to talk about it. We've probably all seen some sort of an example or influencers taking heat from some sort of sour brand deal gone wrong. And that can kind of make the audience feel like we can't trust that person anymore. It's almost like they let you down. And that can be really, an icky feeling as like a consumer of content or as a follower, But I also think it's interesting because you have to think, we all make bad decisions, right? We all do things and we're like, oh, maybe like reflecting back, that wasn't the best choice, right? But because these people are putting themselves on the internet for all of us to see, it's like we all see when they make those bad choices, and cancel culture is like this huge thing. So I find that aspect of it really interesting. I think the other thing that's important to recognize when we're being influenced by influencers is, when we start feeling negative about ourselves or start over comparing ourselves with other people, because there can be this desire to keep up with the trends, the need to have new stuff all the time because influencers are constantly sharing new clothes with us, new products with us, and we feel like, oh my God, I need to keep up. And this is a huge one we've seen with TikTok, where trends are just so fast that companies like Shein, who are ruining the planet because it's disgusting fast fashion and they're just pumping out clothes in the most unethical standards and for cheap, well, we're going to buy it because we want to keep up with the trends. And then we wear something once and it gets thrown away and put in a landfill. Like, that's really sad to me. It can be hard to kind of not conform to the standards of, you see your friends buying from Shein, or you see your friends buying these fast fashion companies, and then you want to do it too. And you don't always think about, wait, like, I feel icky for supporting such a bad company, or after seeing, the research about the amount of garbage that they are creating and the unethical work standards that they have, is like, it's sad to think of how many people support it just because it's cheap, it's quick, it's fast fashion, and it's trendy, and I want the trends, and it's all about me, me, me. So that's kind of a negative side, I think, to this influencer culture, is just how quick things are getting pumped out. I think another negative side of these influencers or influencer culture is, again, that we often only see highlight reels, and there can be a lot of comparison and jealousy, or we can have negative feelings about ourselves. This is not new information. But those are all things that come up when we think about our favorite influencers, or how fortunate they've been, or how much they're sharing, and we just wish that we could afford all the things that they are promoting to us and that we want to buy, because partly because we like them, we want to support them, and partly because we want to have the cool new stuff. Layer number 4 is our parents or our family. The feeling like you need to follow in the footsteps of your family members, whether it's a parent, an older sibling who's a high achiever, the need to kind of live up to expectations. And this one can be really challenging, because I think when you have this relationship, again, your relationship with your family is like no other relationship in your life. You want to feel like you get along with your family. You want to follow what they want for you. You want to think that they want the best for you. But sometimes what they want for you isn't what you want. And that can be really challenging. We see this countless times in like movies and television, where there's a son, Dad, it's never been my dream, it's just your dream. The classic spiel of wanting to impress our parents, wanting to do what they want for us, and feeling almost this like we owe it to them. We owe it to them to be what they want from me, because they've provided me life and they've supported me financially for 18 years and they've ultimately helped shape who I am. So in a way, yeah, we do owe a lot to our parents, but do we owe them being exactly what they want us to be? I don't think so. And I really think this can be challenging. I've been very fortunate to have a very supportive family, and so I don't even want to speak on the opposite too much because I haven't experienced it. I've been really fortunate that my family supports me, and they have supported me in certain decisions and backed me up in certain situations. And I know that doesn't happen for everyone. So I am very fortunate in that sense. And I feel like, I've seen it even with friends feeling like they can't live up to these unrealistic expectations. And I've seen from them, how challenging that can be, and how much it hurts to feel like you don't even have an unconditional love from your family, which every single person deserves. No matter what, you should have unconditional love from your family. So I think it can be hard to be like, okay, my parents want me to do this, but I don't. Like, what do you even do about it? And that's sticky. It can be hard. But we're going to get into how to recognize these influences so that you can think for yourself. And again, make decisions that are going to be right for you, because at the end of the day, it's your life, no one else's, and you need to be happy with the life you're living. My first tip for recognizing when influencing is going wrong is to unfollow anyone on social media who doesn't make you feel good about yourself. People who make you feel icky, they make you feel less than, and it might not even be that person's intent. But I think we could all agree that in some way, shape, or form, we've compared ourselves to someone at some point. And I can think of someone in particular recently that I've come across their profile, and I find myself being like, wow, like this person seems so successful. They seem like they have everything, going for them. And I've definitely had thoughts of like, oh, I kind of want to get there. Or I want to be where she is. And I've had to be like, wait, pause. Like, no, I don't. I do want my own version of like getting there or being successful, but I don't even know this person, and I know that they don't have a perfect life, and I'm sure they struggle with things just as much as the rest of us. So that was someone I had to make the decision of like, okay, I'm not going to follow this person, or I don't want to keep up with them because I just was feeling icky about myself, even though that person wasn't posting anything negative, but it was just the way their content didn't resonate with me in a positive way. And it made me feel like I was comparing myself. So recognize that. If there are celebrities or influencers that don't make you feel good about yourself for whatever reason, you don't have to follow them. You don't have to keep up with what they're doing. And I think it's healthy to not keep up with them or to mute people if there's people in your life who, maybe you just don't want to see what they're up to, but you don't want to unfollow them for whatever reason. Mute them. You don't have to see what they're up to. Tip number 2 would be to always consciously or make the conscious effort to kind of take a step back in situations. So when we can learn to look at things from almost from an outsider perspective, I think it can be really helpful to kind of decide if a situation is getting out of your hands, if you're again just going along with things to conform, or if you're actually making a decision consciously for yourself. So for example, if you were a fly on the wall watching a situation, what would you see? Would you like the way that you were acting? Would you want yourself to make a different decision? And then do what feels right for you. Another big one is like the bystander effect, which is the psychological, like social theory that states that individuals are less likely to help a victim in the presence of other people. So we assume that someone is going to help. We assume that someone, is going to be there for them or help a victim. Whereas if it's just you and the person, there's no one around, you're going to feel this sense of responsibility to try to help them. But when you know there's other people around, you're less likely to actually act on it. And like, what does that say about us? It's like, oh yeah, someone will help them, right? There's that classic example, the murder of Kitty Genovese. I don't know if I'm saying her name right. But it was this woman, she was brutally murdered in like a apartment complex in New York City. This is back in 1964. And she was stabbed, she was screaming, like there was a whole scene, right? It was not a quiet occurrence. It was this brutal murder, and she's screaming for help. No one did anything. And when the police ended up interviewing people, it turned out that about 30 to 40 people actually either saw something or heard something. And yet no one did anything. Why? Because of this bystander effect, which was like, this is where bystander effect actually came to life, was from this example, because people just made the assumption that, well, someone will help. Someone must have already called the police, so I won't. And we see this all the time. And it's kind of sad. Like, we just happen to conform to things or conform with what we think will happen without actually really taking any responsibility. Another thing I value a lot is spending time alone. And what I think learning to spend time alone and be content by yourself and taking space for yourself is so important, because it allows you to actually like think for yourself and make decisions for yourself. And it allows you to say, wait a sec, how do I actually think about this? Without other people being around to influence me, how do I feel about a given situation or a given conversation topic we had, where maybe you didn't share your thoughts, or You were kind of like, oh yeah, and just agreed with whatever the person was saying, right? But it's important to give yourself space to be like, wait, what do I think about this? Or what does this mean for me? Because when we practice that, and practice is sort of reflection, you teach yourself to start thinking more for yourself. And again, this is so important because if you don't know what you actually think about things, how can you make a proper decision that you're going to be happy with? So ask yourself, okay, this is what happened. How do I feel about it? Or what are things going in my life? Do I feel positively, negatively? Okay, why do I think I feel like this? Like, it's not something you need to analyze all the time, but it's important to take space to think for yourself and think about, again, how you feel about different situations. Going back to this kind of idea of shifting priorities, a big one for me was I kind of actually thinking about it, I've never thrived in like a big party environment. I've never really enjoyed going to large gatherings where there's like 40 plus people. I just feel like it's never a good time to chat with people. It's awkward. I end up seeing the same people that I've met like 3 different times because I've only met them and talked to them for 2 seconds. That it's like every time we see each other, it's like, oh, hey, I'm Victoria. And it's like, I don't want to reintroduce myself to people for a 3rd time and know that I'm never going to talk to them again. Like, I've never enjoyed huge parties. Okay, let's put it that way. So obviously in school, a lot of things you're doing on the weekend is like going to parties, and that's fine. And I think it took me a while to realize that I wasn't having fun. But again, when I kind of got older into my mid 20s, I still felt this kind of, it was like this cognitive dissonance of like, I want to do these things because my friends are doing them, or I want to have fun at these parties, but I'm just not. But I felt like I should go anyways because that's what my friends wanted to do. And, looking back, I'm like, I wish I was just confident enough to be like, you know what, let's hang out under different circumstances. You go have fun and I'll probably stay in, or let me know when's a good time. Maybe we can go for a movie or hang out in a small group or whatever. But it's like, why was I so afraid to say that at the time? Or why was I afraid that if I didn't conform to what my friends were doing, we wouldn't be friends anymore? I feel like we have these unrealistic fears. And it was definitely this fear that like people were just going to leave me if I didn't do what they wanted to do. But I also think there needs to be a level of, okay, so what? If I stop going to parties and that means my friends aren't friends with me anymore, well, clearly that's not what I define as friendship anyways. So it should be okay, right? Or like it shouldn't mean that maybe I have the wrong friends, or maybe I need to branch out. So I think in terms of friends influencing us and just people in our life in general, it's okay to feel like you don't fit in. It's okay to shift and be like, listen, maybe I do need new friends. Maybe we've grown apart. Maybe things are just not the same anymore. And that's okay. And I want to stress that because I've definitely been there where I felt like, again, this all or nothing. Like if I don't have these people in my life, life's going to suck. But then I wasn't happy doing the things that they were doing, but then I wasn't willing to voice that concern. How are they supposed to know, right? It's not their fault. How are they supposed to know that I wasn't happy doing certain activities if I never said anything too? So it's all this idea of like, you have to also advocate for yourself and learn to speak up and say, listen, this isn't my favorite thing. Maybe one weekend we could do this. Because I think if I said that, I'm sure my friends would be fine with that. But again, it was like this all or nothing where I felt like I didn't want to express that, or I was nervous to express how I felt, which like is unfortunate, really. So I guess I'm going to wrap this up here, but I just think it's so important, again, to be self-reflective of like, where are you being influenced in your life? How are you showing up in the world? How do you want to show up? And are you allowing people to influence you to a point where you feel like you're not even yourself? Take a step back. Because if you are feeling confused about who you are, what you want, where your life is going, then I think it's important to, again, take some space, separate yourself from a lot of different people and just be like, hey, what do I actually want? And are the people around me going to help me, or are they actually holding me back? And just because you've been friends with people for a long time, just because your parents want something for you, it doesn't mean it's right for you, and it doesn't mean it's going to make you happy. And it doesn't mean you need to still be friends with the same people forever. So be okay and open to change. The right people will always find you, but I think being conscious of where we're being influenced and when it doesn't feel right, because I don't think influencer culture too is all bad, right? Or it's fun to have friends who push us out of our comfort zone. We should be happy to have friends who are like, no, I think this would be good for us. Let's do it. And you're like, you know what? Yeah, you're right. And that's a positive thing. But when you feel like it's negative, or you feel like you're being steered in the wrong direction by your friends or by people in your life, then yeah, that's maybe a time to step back. But it's not to say that anytime someone influences you, it's negative, right? It's not. It can be great to have friends who push you out of your comfort zone or challenge your ideas. But it all kind of stems from, are you secure in yourself? And are they coming from a positive place where they actually genuinely are trying to push you to do something positive? So I'm going to wrap this up. Thank you for listening. I hope something resonated with you. And if you're Canadian, I hope you had a great Thanksgiving. I'm seeing my family tomorrow, and I'm really excited about it. It's been a long time since I've seen some of my cousins that I'm going to see. So I'm quite excited and feeling very grateful this year for a lot. I'm grateful for my friends who pushed me to do a podcast, and I'm grateful for the people who've been showing up and listening. Thank you. I really do appreciate it. I'm very grateful for my family and being able to celebrate Thanksgiving with them. And I'm grateful for my cozy apartment where I'm able to record my podcast and create space for something that I enjoy doing. So that's all for me. Have a great day, evening, night, wherever you are, and I will chat with you next week.